space. I see it's standing room only at the back. It's very impressive. Okay. Good morning, everyone. My name is Benoit-Antoine. I am the Provost here at Concordia University. Welcome to the 13th International Karl Polanyi Conference. On behalf of our president, Dr. Alan Shepard, I want to start by saying how honored we are to host the conference and how pleased we are to welcome you all to our campus. We at Concordia, we've had a long relationship with Karl Polanyi. Our Karl Polanyi Institute of Political Economy was established in 1988. That's 26 years ago. At its core, the Institute pays tribute to Karl Polanyi, who's truly one of the most important social science thinkers of the 20th century. It's been 70 years, incredibly, 70 years since the publication of The Great Transformation, which came, as you know, towards the end of the Second World War, and yet both the style and the substance of the classic volume remain resolutely modern today. In the true spirit of Karl Polanyi, the Institute aims to contribute to urgent policy debates on new development strategies, locally and internationally. And given the major political movements that we're seeing in the world today, the Institute's goals are more than ever relevant and incredibly important. Every 2 years, as you all know, the Institute convenes an international conference alternating between various host countries and Canada. Margie was describing you guys as a tribe before as we were chatting. The conference is a key forum to tackle crucial issues like those featured in today's panels. For example, the role of women in the decommodification of land, labor, and money, and state responses to the crisis. This edition of the conference is also special. We'll be officially launching the Karl Polanyi Digital Archives. The archives capture the rich intellectual legacy of Karl Polanyi. It includes the notes, lecture notes, outlines of projected books, drafts of manuscript, unpublished papers, published articles by Karl Polanyi, as well as papers by other authors. Interestingly, it also includes an impressive array of Polanyi's lifetime correspondence with intellectuals, political figures, students, colleagues, family, and friends. By using open source technology, the archives will be accessible to researchers and students worldwide and free of charge. Wow. This is a great day for Concordia. I think I'll stop here. I'll turn over the floor to, and I won't do a long introduction, Margie? I'll just say an exceptional scholar that we're so proud to have with us at Concordia, and a wonderful colleague, the director of the Karl Polanyi Institute of Political Economy, Margie Mendell.
And my apologies, I said Benoit-Antoine, he's a journalist, and it just shows a bit of conference jitters, I guess, the opening day, Benoit-Antoine. To me, it's Benoit, because we're so rarely we refer to his full name. So thank you very, very much, Benoit, and it really is a pleasure and an honor for me to welcome you here today to the 13th International Karl Polanyi Conference, the enduring legacy of Karl Polanyi. As I look around the room, I see many familiar faces, the tribe, as Benoit referred to, and many new faces, and that's really important for us. In order to have this enduring legacy of Karl Polanyi persist, conferences need to have new faces, young people in the audience, students, people who will carry forward the ideas of Karl Polanyi, and more important than that, carry forward the work that he proposed to reintroduce, I hate to say it this way, but reintroduce some sanity into the world today. We are experiencing crises that I think he would not have imagined. And I try to imagine how he would respond to contemporary political, economic, environmental, social crises, of which there are numerous ones that we could list. I would also like to welcome a very large and very special delegation from Korea. We have 22 Koreans here with us. Yeah, there they are. I wish I could name them all. Please forgive me, I will not. There are actually 52 Koreans who are visiting Quebec this week, who are interested in local economic development, in the social and solidarity economy. It's a combination of researchers, practitioners in the social and solidarity economy, mayors of many cities and municipalities across the country, association of mayors, association of local development agencies, and admirers very much so of the work of Karl Polanyi. I've been privileged to be in Korea a few times, and it is really quite remarkable, not only the very important translations of Polanyi that exist in Korean, but also in the university settings, a number of scholars that are teaching Polanyi and are bringing the influence of Polanyi into everyday life in Korean society. So we welcome you. I know you can't stay for the whole conference because you have meetings across Quebec, and today and tomorrow in Montreal. So a heartfelt welcome to all of you. Benoit mentioned that the Institute was created in 1988 here at Concordia. I just want to go back a little bit, and for those, because there were a few of us actually who were in Budapest in 1986. There's hands going up. There's at least 4 or 5 of us who were in Budapest. Just means we're all getting much older, but we're hanging in. We were in Budapest together in 1986 to mark the centenary of Karl Polanyi at an international conference that was organized by the Hungarian Academy of Sciences. And there was never any suggestion or idea of creating an institute at the time, but there was a very, very strong interest in continuing a dialogue that had begun in Budapest. So we were committed to that. And when we came back, at the time, the dean here at Concordia, who was a historian, met with me and Carrie, and we talked about the papers, the archive that Carrie had, her father's literary legacy, and he proposed that we put together a proposal to create an institute. So here we are, 26 years later, and he's not here today, Charles Bertrand, but I remember and recognize the intelligence of his proposal. The interest and work of Kari Polanyi has grown exponentially in all fields, in all disciplines. In addition to the conferences that we organize here, there have been seminars, conferences, workshops all over the world. There is an institute, Karl Polanyi Institute in France. Jean de Villaville is here with us. There will be an institute opened imminently in Korea, in Seoul. And the doors have not been open yet, but we have brochures and lots of them out in the reception area. Please help yourselves. The great and I should also say about the Korean experience at the Seoul Karl Polanyi Institute, or Asia Karl Polanyi Institute as it will be called, has the full endorsement and participation and enthusiastic commitment of the Mayor Park, Won-Soon Park of Seoul, who is a remarkable individual. The Great Transformation has now been translated into 14 languages. 20? How did Anna? Where are you? Yeah, but there have been retranslations. I can't keep up with it. It's a moving target, the translations continue. But what is very interesting for us here at the Institute, and often I'm asked, what goes on a daily basis. We have a constant flow of researchers, of students, of faculty, of non-academics who are interested, organic intellectuals, who are interested in the life and work of Karl Polanyi. Some are Polanyi scholars, others are influenced by his work and wish to explore the archive. And while we are going to celebrate the digitalization of the archive, which I think is a remarkable achievement, the fact remains that there are a lot of people who still like to come and settle in. And we've had visitors who come for as long as a year and as short as a day. And I invite you all, if you have time, if you stay over in next week, to have a look at, come up and see the Institute. It's a very small place, but it's very rich, and it's intellectually a very rich environment. I have many people I'd like to thank today. I will not thank them all, but I will thank a few, and people and organizations. First of all, I'd like to begin with our colleagues at Van City Centre, which is a credit union based in British Columbia that has supported this conference. Also, CRISE, Concordia. CRISE is the Centre de Recherche sur l'Innovation Sociale. It is an inter-university research network across Quebec. Here at Concordia, the departments of History, Religion, Sociology and Anthropology, the School of Community and Public Affairs, and the David O'Brien Center for Sustainable Enterprise have very generously contributed to this event, and there are other organizations and individuals who have also been very generous. My special thanks go to Danielle Saleh and to Kari Polanyi Levitt. This is one of many times I will thank her in the next few days. But together, the three of us went through the numerous, very interesting abstracts that we received as proposals and did the hard work of selection and constructing a program which you have in front of you. There may have been some slight changes in the program that you have because we had some last-minute cancellations and we weren't able to integrate those into the printed program. My very special thanks go to my university for its ongoing commitment to the Polanyi Institute, to the Office of Research Services, to the library, and I will speak more about that later this evening, and to Dr. Shepard, to Benoit-Antoine, and all those, and to Graham Carr, who have been really wonderful friends of the Institute and have provided invaluable support. This conference marks the 50th anniversary of the death of Karl Polanyi and the 70th anniversary of the publication of The Great Transformation. As I just mentioned, we will launch the archive later this evening. I also want to remind you, those of you who have your programs, but there are also some students here who may not necessarily come to all the sessions, that we will be launching the film by Ilan Ziv tomorrow evening at 5:30, Karl Polanyi, The Human Factor. I will say more about the film tomorrow, but just to say that I encourage you to come and see the film tomorrow evening. It's part of a 6-hour series on capitalism. I will say more about this tomorrow evening. Finally, before I stop and introduce Kari Polanyi Levitt, I want to, again, for the first of many times, thank Anna. Is she here? There she is. Anna Gomez. There aren't enough words to express to thank Anna. She's everything. She's a tiny little person with many qualities and rolled into one. I have been very lucky to have her really by my side for the last 25 years, 25 of the 26 years. We've never had a quarrel, ever, which is ever. We get upset at the same things, and we have a wonderful capacity, really, thanks to her, to inject a lot of humor into some of the stresses that we have to experience. But I want to say that she's really quite remarkable. We joke about this, but I want to add a serious note to the fact that she has played such an important role in not only welcoming visitors to the Institute, but guiding them, shepherding them through the archive, knowing where material is and accessing it very easily, discussing content with researchers who are visiting the Institute. She worked very, very closely with the archivist on the digitizing project, and remarkably, I think I think Anna is now eligible to work as an open source digital archive person. She's saying no. But these were very technical skills, and it was necessary for somebody to be able to have those skills in order for us to work with the company that helped us with this project. So my thanks to you, Anna, today, tomorrow, next day, always. I know lots of you have been in contact with her. It's a total pleasure and really an honor to work with you. Now, I've been given too many roles this morning, so I'm going to, but this one is really, for this morning, the one which is, for me, the most precious and the most important. And that is to introduce my colleague, my friend, my former professor, mentor, Kari Polanyi Levitt. I have lots that I could say about her, but I won't, because I would like to give her the floor. But if you'll permit me, I will say a few things. Kari is a professor emerita, economics, McGill University. She's honorary president of the Karl Polanyi Institute. And it was 30 years ago that Professor Kari Polanyi Levitt invited me to apply at the time for a Social Sciences Humanities Research Council postdoctoral fellowship. She invited me to work with her on her father's literary legacy. And the rest is history. And we celebrated the 25th anniversary of the Institute last year. For me, this has been an extraordinary and very fulfilling journey that we have traveled on together, and we have traveled. We've traveled internationally, both in collecting material for the archive that was outside Canada, and also on many occasions connected with the life and work of Karl Polanyi. And we celebrated Kari's 90th birthday a year ago, so Kari is 91 years old, and and looks quite remarkably youthful, is very youthful, and has a lot of energy, and sometimes much more than I do. And I look forward to many more years of collaboration with her. Kari Polanyi Levitt is an internationally renowned political economist. Her contributions have been recognized by the academic community and most recently by the Government of Canada that awarded her an Order of Canada for her contribution to the study and multidisciplined research in the field of international development, as well as her research and insights into the political economy of the Caribbean. To this, I would also add her contributions to Canadian political economy. Her seminal book, Silent Surrender, published in 1970, was translated into French in 1972. McGill Queen's Press published a new edition of Silent Surrender in 2002. Kari Polanyi Levitt is a founding member of the Canadian Association for the Study of International Development, created in 1984, that established an annual prize for Best Graduate Student Essay in her name. She was also a founding member of the Association of Caribbean Economists in 1987. In 2004, she became an honorary member of the Hungarian Academy of Sciences, an honor conferred only on Hungarian nationals, and I was very proud to accompany her on that trip. In 2008, the Progressive Economists Forum awarded Professor Polanyi Levitt the John Kenneth Galbraith Prize. More recently, the Centre d'études sur l'intégration et la mondialisation, CIM, at the University du Québec à Montréal, UQAM, created an annual Karl Polanyi Levitt Scholarship in recognition of her role as a pioneer in political economy and for her path-breaking research on economic development. In her recently published collection of essays, which I have here, From the Great Transformation to the Great Financialization, which I urge you all to purchase, Kari Polanyi Levitt traces the trajectory of capitalism from its mercantilist beginnings to the financial crisis of 2008. The book is divided, and the second half of the book has some wonderful, extraordinary essays on Karl Polanyi. And if you would permit me, I'm just going to quote from the book before I give Carrie the floor. She writes, "The transformation of the capitalist order requires a new calculus of the value of work, the value of human needs, and the value of nature. Basic human needs of security, affection, respect, and protection have no place in formal economics. Economic decisions have to be made, but the value system must be one that accords with the realities of people living in real societies and a very real dependence on the natural environment and its very real limitations. Economics has to return to some very basic questions of use value and exchange value. We have to take into account the real value of human effort and work, and that is very different from its market value. We have to protect nature and our social and cultural heritage." Bravo, Carrie. And now, a great pleasure to give the floor to Carrie. Would you like to remain seated, Carrie?
No,
You come here? Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Maggie.
Is this okay?
Yes. Yeah, I think so. I am very moved to here this morning to greet you, to welcome you to what feels like a gigantic family reunion. Margie referred to us as a tribe. I don't know, but I want to emphasize that really, yes, this is the 70th anniversary of the publication of The Great Transformation and the 50th anniversary of the death of my father. But I think we have to understand that this is a very special conference. There is something about this gathering which I feel is a little magical, and I hope I will not be disappointed in the next 3 days. Because I think what we have to do here in these next 3 days is to undertake a discussion of the reasons that have made the book, The Great Transformation, so lasting. And I don't know what they are. It's a question I have asked myself, and I have asked some friends to explain to me what it is about this book, written by somebody virtually unknown 70 years ago, who never had a formal certification in any of the social sciences, who never had a university position until after the age of retirement, never founded a journal, never founded a school, and yet this book not only survived, in fact had a steady readership throughout all of these years, but in recent times, and most particularly, I would say, since the financial crash of 2008, but even before that, since the mid-1990s, including that important WTO meeting in Seattle, has gained an importance that is quite extraordinary. And I pose the question of really why? What is it about this work? I was so interested in the reference made not only to its contents, but also to its style and its way of communication. But what is it? And I think we're going to be concerned, I hope, in the course of this conference to confront this question from many different angles. And in a little while, toward the end of my talk, I'm going to suggest some of the questions that I think should be addressed. But right now, I really want to recognize some of our very old friends present here, starting with Fred Bloch. Because Fred has, I think, really made the name of Kari Polanyi known in the United States for sure, perhaps in the English-speaking world, but certainly in the US, in a way, and that although, of course, as you know, I don't agree with a lot of Fred, but that is up for discussion. But the importance really is the fact that he has been so influential and so important in bringing this important book to the attention of both academia and the general public. So we are going to, and then of course we have Margaret Summers, who is a superb scholar and who was also present in Budapest at that centenary conference, and the co-author of the book, which we will review in a panel, I think later this afternoon. But there are so many other old friends here, and I cannot start to name them because then I will miss some of them. But however, having said that, I met earlier, a few minutes ago, my former student and dear friend Aisha Pura. And would you believe it, she was standing next to me and I did not recognize her because I have very, very poor vision. But it brought me back to that, I think also somewhat magical conference that she organized in Istanbul in 2005. I met Ezio Mingioni, who I remember hosted our Milano conference in 1990, and also attended some of our other conferences here. Jérôme Maucourant, who has done so much to make Polanyi's work known in France, and together with Michele Cangiani, who is also here, produced that magnificent tome of essays of Karl Polanyi in French. But that is not all, because Michele also collaborated with Klaus Thomasberger, who is also here, in a 3-volume collection of Polanyi essays in German. And they are currently working on yet another collection in Italian of essays not previously published in Italy, because many had already been published. And that reminds me of our friend Salzano, who played an important part in that. And that essay, that book, that collection has a wonderful title, I think, for it. I may not have it right. It's a social humanity, human society, both of them, or some such combination. Well, just a moment. There's more. There recently was a very comprehensive collection in Portuguese of my father's essays, produced in Rio, in Brazil. A special collection in Spanish, focusing on the social solidarity economy, produced in Buenos Aires. And I must mention, although he is not able to be with us, Giorgio Resta, who produced a collection translated to Italian of essays not previously published by anybody in any language, which, under the title of For a New West. And this collection is now available in English, published by Polity Press, recommended by our friends Keith Hart and Emmanuel Wallerstein in blurbs. And it constitutes the first collection of Polanyi essays in the English language. It cannot be the last. There must be more. Translations of my father's book, yes, I could count up to 20. When I was recently asked by the producers of Ilan Zib's documentary to collect some of them because they wanted to scan the titles, I think they cover just about every language in Europe. But interestingly, the two countries in which, apart from Japan, the Japanese translate everything, and they did that a long time ago already, as far as Polanyi books are concerned. But the two countries that has somehow shown the most interest in the work of my father are in Italy and in South Korea. I find that really quite remarkable because that they are at the polar opposites, if you wish, of the European influence in this world. In Italy, that is certainly the source of the Renaissance and the repository of European culture. And South Korea, which is this emerging country of Asia, about which I will speak more, not about Korea particularly, but about the emergence of Asia, if there is time. No, you know, when I had to consider what I would talk about, it seems to me that because I am the last living connection, really, to my father and my mother, Kari Polanyi, that it would be interesting for you to hear some personal reflections on a title I have called it The World Life and the Social Philosophy of Karl Polanyi. So let me start there. Let me start with the remarkable life partnership of my parents, Ilona Luchinska and my father, Karl Polanyi, which covered 40 years and 5 countries, from Vienna, where they first met, to London, to New York, with a kind of a side story about Canada, also Canada, and ultimately Budapest, where, before they knew each other, and quite separately, each of them had a life, an important life, which made an important contribution to Hungarian social and cultural life. In May of this year, I was invited to Berlin to give a lecture at the Rosa Luxemburg Foundation. And the title of the lecture was the title of my book that Margie showed you, From the Great Transformation to the Great Financialization. But something when I got there moved me to talk about really something rather different. I think what moved me was that this lecture took place on May 8th. And as I said to the people there, that is a date that most young people, it will not say anything to you, but to some of us who are a lot older, and especially those of us who lived during the war in Europe, May 8th was Victory in Europe Day. May 8th was the end of the Second World War. It was a date of enormous significance and enormous celebration. And that got me to thinking about the First World War and the 100-year anniversary with 2014. It's interesting to me that not very much has been written by people. You'd think that would be a subject of interest, to look at this world and what has happened to it precisely in those 100 years since the crash of the civilization Polanyi talked about on the first page of the book. And perhaps we are looking at another crash of a different nature, and we can talk about in the course of this conference. I recall that my mother, who took the Zimmerwald Declaration of War Against War in 1916 or 17, I'm not sure, from Switzerland to Vienna, and from Vienna to Budapest. And this young woman, at that time in Budapest, found some other young people, and she wrote the text of these leaflets, found a printer, and between them they organized the distribution of anti-war literature in the barracks and in the war factories of Budapest. They were eventually arrested and charged with high treason. If you want to see more of that story, I have posted the text of that lecture on my website, and I haven't got time to tell you more. But in that very same lecture, I also recalled my father when he was a very young child in Vienna, because the family, he was born in Vienna. The family was originally in Vienna, where they were very closely befriended with another family, basically, Klashko family, which had similarly come from Vilna, in what was then Russia. And my father recalled and told me many times of the impression that was made on him by these Russian revolutionaries who came. We're talking about the late 1880s, and we're not talking about even the 20th century. And some of them, it's said, in their feet wrapped in newspapers, and they came for a sort of rest and recuperation before going to their next assignment as revolutionaries, fighting the Tsarist regime. So he had an enormous admiration for the personal courage of these people. I'm sure today they would be called terrorists. That's exactly what they were doing at that time, but there was really no other way to combat Tsarism in those days. My parents met in Vienna in 1920. As I say, both of them having, bringing with them quite a past, a Hungarian past, a Budapest past. And my father told me, or wrote me, I don't know, I think it was a letter, that when he met my mother as a young woman, she was 10 years older, of course, or 11 years older, and her name was Polish, and that was close enough to his ideal of the Russian young revolutionary woman. So, the First World War. The First World War was a traumatic event. It is an event that shattered all the apparent certainties of the Belle Epoque that came before it. I think some of you may have read or seen a book called 1913, which describes how peaceful and wonderful in many ways the world seemed to be, and how totally unexpected that the outbreak of that war was, how it was expected to be resolved in a few weeks. It was just a minor matter of some diplomatic incident, that somebody got assassinated in Bosnia or something. But it was not turned into a most ghastly 4-year slaughter. My father himself experienced this as a cavalry officer for the Austro-Hungarian army on the Russian front in Galicia. Conditions were terrible. But I'm mentioning this because at the end of that war he wrote something called The Calling of Our Generation. And it's an extraordinary document because it seems to express his sense of responsibility for all that had happened, and that of his whole generation, and that of all those people that lived and created that Belle Epoque. And it was indeed, in terms of its cultural achievements, whether you're looking at Vienna or Paris or London at that time, the Belle Epoque of the end of the European century, if you wish, compares very well with the similar financialization and similar rentier classes that are benefiting from the financialization of the present era. No comparison. Anyway, I'm not going there. I believe that the First World War was the defining event in the life of Karl Polanyi. I believe that he then undertook, for the rest of his life, to understand the ultimate causes of not only that war, but all the events which followed it for the next 30 years, to find what he called the political and economic origins, and those he found in the establishment of industrial capitalism from the late 18th century, so well described in the book. Now, a number of people have commented that my father made a bad career choice. He should, and if he had been able to enter into academia like his colleagues Karl Mannheim and George Lukács, who incidentally was a close friend and of the same age, they went to the same school. I think they went to the same primary school together. Well, if my father had followed the academic path, he would not have been so unknown and so obscure for so long. But he made only one career choice. Because Mama made the choices for all the boy children. Mama, Cecile Mama, as she is known, decided that the oldest son, Adolf, was to be an engineer following Papa's footsteps. Karl, the next, was to be a lawyer who could and did work in the chambers of his rich uncle and assist in maintaining the family and the bourgeois style to which they were accustomed. The youngest son was Michael, who was to be a medical doctor. And none of them followed any of these careers. But the only choice my father ever made was to say no. No to the chosen career, no to the rich uncle's chambers, no to the bourgeois life. And he was described by his niece, my cousin Eva, who some of you know. Eva became Eva Zeisel as a dropout. I think that is a good description of what he chose to do, to drop out of that scene. He went to Vienna in 1919, as I mentioned already. That's where he met my mother. In Vienna, he engaged in a very important dispute with Ludwig von Mises about the feasibility of a socialist economy. In the pages of the prestigious German-speaking journal of that time. And in 1924, he obtained a position on the staff of the Österreichische Volkswirt, which was the leading economic journal of German-speaking world, Central Europe, where he was able to observe in detail and comment in weekly columns on all the developments in Europe at that time. And not Europe alone, because apparently he followed the civil wars in China, the invasion of Manchuria, think I need a glass of water. Thank you so much. Okay. Until his employment was basically terminated in 1933, and he moved to London. In London, and this is an important part of the story, he had a support system in the form of the family Grant, Irene and Donald Grant. They were our friends in Vienna. They had been our friends in Vienna. They were awesome. The children were my friends. They were Christian socialists. And they had a group I may say that when I was sent to England in 1934, I went to live with the Grant family, and their 3 children were my siblings, remain my siblings, the siblings I never had because I was an only child. The group of Christian socialists, and Irene Grant really was the spider at the center of the web, I think of it. She was the organizer of this group. It included an Anglo-Catholic priest, Father Grosser, who had a parish in Stepney, then the East End, then the poor part of London. Sorry about this. It included a handful of communists. It included John McMurray and his wife Betty. John McMurray, some of you may have heard of him as being the guru of Tony Blair. I hate to say that, but it seems to be a fact. In connection with this, there arrived in England a volume, actually I think it was 2 volumes because I think I remember what they looked like, the collected early writings of Marx, including the Paris manuscripts. They were published in Germany in 1932. They were physically taken to Switzerland after the accession of Hitler to office. They were brought to England, and my father became the translator and instructor of this group of people over a period of months of the contents of these writings. The Grant family, Donald Grant, made his living as an itinerant lecturer to schools and colleges in England and the United States. He went back and forth between England and the US lecturing. In the US he lectured on European politics, international affairs. In England he lectured on the marvels of the various states of the United States with slides and so on. And he managed to arrange for my father to go on such lecture tours, 2 or 3 of them, before he got employment with the Workers' Educational Association in 1937. He told me once that he had been to almost every state of the United States in the 1930s. When my father got the position as tutor for the WEA, for the counties of Kent and Sussex, we moved to my mother found a little house in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of a field. There was no electricity, but there was the most important thing, which otherwise my father would not have agreed, there was a telephone. Telephone was much more important to him than electricity. But before we go there, when my mother first came to London in 1936, because I must tell you that from 33 from 34, when I was sent away, until 1936, she engaged in that now illegal underground resistance to Austrian fascism in connection with the Schutzbund, the military arm of the Social Democratic Socialist Party. She came to England in 36. At that time, my father had found a place for us to live together, for him and my mother to live together. I had meanwhile obtained a place in a boarding school, so I was not going to live with them there. This was a rooming house in Western Lane in Kentish Town. It was a lady, she was a child psychiatrist, but she had in the basement facilities for some residents. These residents, I remember them well, were an assortment of a species called graduate students. They seemed to be eternal, and at least some of them, the ones I remember well, came from India, and I think they were all at the London School of Economics. But that was the first time I'd encountered graduate students, and they were introduced to me as a profession. They were there for any length of time. Now, when the lady psychiatrist, on a Saturday, she would invite children to come, and she would supply them with paints, and they had paper, and they were on the floor, and they would do all kinds of things with the paint on the floor, and she would interpret these patterns that they were making, or whatever they were doing there. So when she heard that Karl Polanyi's wife was about to arrive, she assumed that his wife, coming from Vienna, was bound to be a good cook. And that she could assist in making breakfasts for the residents, the students, and so on. Well, that's another story, because my mother had many virtues, but certainly cooking was definitely not one of them. Now the WEA, we lived in the country. In 1940, my father was once again in the United States when the Germans invaded France. The war had really started. It was not possible to return, and he was fortunate then in obtaining a scholarship, a Rockefeller scholarship, and an invitation from Bennington College, Vermont, to come as a resident professor, and that is where the Great Transformation was written. But you know, he left for England in early 1943. The book was really not quite finished. The two penultimate chapters, not the last chapter, but the two preceding it, were left with a friend, a gentleman called Kuvenhoven, to complete, because he wanted to participate in the discussions about the post-war world. So what had happened? The Battle of Stalingrad had turned the tide of the war. It was clear that the Allies were on the way to victory, and he didn't want to be one more week away from London. He returned. In 1943, when he sent the final manuscript of what became the Great Transformation to the publisher, he also included an outline for another book proposed to the publisher Reinhardt, called The Common Man's Master Plan. The book was never written. The purpose of this book was to present in the plainest and clearest language the contents of the Great Transformation. In other words, the problems that remain to be addressed in the post-war world. And what I have only recently seen this document. I don't know how many of you have seen it. It is quite extraordinary. Because, and at this point, I am really sorry that I have no sight, because I would have liked to read you some of the words that were used. But again, I can put that on my website and you can read it. Because he there presented his philosophy. And the philosophy was that the common sense of the common people was a more accurate and a more reliable basis judgment of the important things in life and in the society than that of the educated. The common people do not require education, to be educated in order to participate in politics, but rather to the contrary, democracy as a way of life depends on the collective, the pool of knowledge of the common people, their lived experience as a repository of popular cultural knowledge and wisdom. He has an important article on Rousseau, Jean-Jacques Rousseau, or Is Freedom Possible?, in which he claims Rousseau on his as evidence that Rousseau discovered the people, not in the political sense of the multitude, not in the economic sense of the poor, but in the sense of the people as the repository as his lived experience and wisdom and common sense in the widest terms. I cannot remember the words, but that is indeed the point. From 1945 to 1947, my parents had a very difficult problems to face. They had to decide where they would live. My mother in 1946 visited Hungary for the first time since she had left there in 1920. And she was clearly drawn to moving there. Their close friends, my parents were close in the emigre Hungarian circles in London with Count Kari and his wife. Count Kari had been the president of Hungary, became again the president of the newly established Democratic Republic in 1945 or 6 or 7, whenever after the war. That was one option. England, of course, where they both very much liked to be, or New York, where my father had offer of employment at Columbia University. Kenneth McRobbie, who has been writing a biography of my mother, but along the way became disenchanted with the subject of the biography he was engaged in, sent me a copy of a letter my mother wrote to my father and said, "Oh, you may find this useful when you give your talk." So, well, I have, and I will attempt to recall it. It's a very short letter. And it was addressed by Ilona to Karl. It said, "We are activated differently. We are motivated differently, you and I. You are motivated by a complex of religion, philosophy, and scientific investigation. I am activated by politics. And these are our limitations. We see the world in the same way, but we are each of us have our limitations. I find her description of my father, and I am quoting you, those were the words, religion, philosophy, and scientific investigation, very interesting. She considered it, Kenneth considered this to be a criticism of Karl Polanyi and proof that he wasn't very scientific. You may take it as you wish. I don't interpret it that way. So we come. Yes, I must say the invitation to Colombia was a blessing. It was not an accident, but it was really quite remarkable that my father did receive this invitation at the age of 61 as a visiting professor for 1 year, was renewed year by year, to give a course on general economic history, because that enabled him to expand the germs of the idea which are in the Great Transformation about reciprocity, redistribution, and exchange as general principles of economic integration, patterns of economic integration, and expand that into the research of primitive and archaic societies in order, I believe, to show definitively that the market economy, more popularly known as capitalism, was unique in human experience, unique in raising individual fear and gain, raising gain and fear of individuals to the organizing principle of what was even by then a very complex modern society, and today is even much more complex, that they were unique in a society that permitted families to fall into destitution when the rest of the population was not hungry or miserable. I must say that in recent years, perhaps David Graeber, Michael Hudson, and so have drawn to our attention also that they were unique. Those societies were unique in cancelling debt, because debt has historically been a means of enslavement, and debt is, in terms of our contemporary world, the principal instrument of bringing into line the sovereign debt and conditions attached to it, whole nations and peoples, to bring them into line with what is conceived by the creditor authorities to be the better way of life and the better way of the economy. So now, in terms of that question, did you make a bad career choice? Well, I say he did not really make the choice, but I do not think it would have been possible if my father had indeed, earlier in his life, ventured into the academe. I don't think it would have been possible for him to keep his mind straight on the task that he gave himself, which was to discover the ultimate causes of what caused the collapse of the civilization in 1914, and which also explained the great transformation that occurred later. I think he would have become diverted into what happens in academia, all kinds of discussions. That is part of what university is about, yes? And it would have sapped his energy and diverted his thought. And he would, because because the life which he lived, his own life, journalism, worker education, adult education, constant writing of articles to attempt to communicate with the common man, with the public, with the ordinary people, his own lived experience is what gave to his own book the kind of wisdom that he attributed to the common people in their own lives. And that is not the currency of the world of the university. So I think that the suggestion that he made the bad career choice, I don't. It is a fact that what he lived the way that he did, but I think we would not have seen the great transformation. And this book, whatever he might have written, would not have had this remarkable ability to survive and to become so relevant to what is now the reincarnation, if you wish, under the name of neoliberalism, of that same economic liberal system that crashed in 1914. Now, I would like, I don't know how much time I have, Margie, you have to tell me, but
Just a
pardon?
just a couple of minutes.
No, give me 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Give me 5 minutes. Give me 5 minutes. Okay, we arranged the agenda of this conference differently from how we had done it in the past in order to have a large number of plenary sessions and to have room for discussion. And I want to put some questions on the table to be discussed in this conference. Don't know if I can do it in 5 minutes. The biggest one I think I have already mentioned. That is the question of what it is about this book that has given it its lasting quality. I think that is the most difficult to answer, but I think that it is important. Obviously, Polanyi did not offer an alternative model to capitalism or market economy, but he gave us, if you wish, some building blocks. And I think the most important of them are the fictitious commodities of land, labor, and money, because land and labor and land, what you call toil and soil, are, after all, the basic to us as social human beings. I want to invite you collectively, the we you, to consider, to go back to the issues of the embedded and or disembedded economy. The related issue, of course, of Fred's proposal that we abandon the use of the word capitalism and substitute market economy or political economy. These are related. Thirdly, the affinity of this world of thought of Karl Polanyi with that of Marx and the differences. There seems to be a desire in the Polanyi circles to put the maximum distance between the thoughts of Karl Polanyi and those of Karl Marx, the two Karls, as I think of them. I think that it is understandable particularly in the United States, that there are pressures to put that distance. I think it is less understandable in Europe, where Marx and Marxism have a much longer and very important tradition. But however, next, I would like to consider the importance of of Christian social doctrines in the world of thought of my father, given the fact that in the English, certainly in England, and I would say also in Canada, Christian socialism played a very important role on the political left. In Canada, it was, I think, fundamental to the formation of the CCF that later became the NDP. Here's a list. Okay. In terms of social movements, or in terms of movements to oppose the commodification of labor, and indeed of virtually all branches of life, the movement for a basic income, I think it deserves consideration. I wrote in the preface to For a New West that Polanyi would have supported the idea of basic income as a citizen right, both on economic and social and also political grounds. But there are also very good questions arise, and they actually are related to the Spiegelland chapter and the Spiegelland experience. I think they are perhaps more, and they comprise a large part of Fred and Margaret's book. I'm not saying that you are opposed to basic income, but I'm saying there are considerations there of dependency, of various kinds. I think the question about reciprocity as an organizing principle of social and solidaristic economic activity, a question arises here: to what degree are these initiatives, to what degree can they be scaled up from the local level, and in what way can they be an effective opposition to the rule of the corporate world? And finally, of course, the question that is specifically on the table here about the double movement. Oh no, I'm sorry, not final, I'm not done yet. I'm not done yet. Before we come to the double movement, it seems to me, and perhaps because I'm particularly interested in political economy, the issue of the nation state, the issue, is it possible to have democracy without sovereignty, if not on a national and perhaps on a regional basis? Is the vision of Polanyi from the 1943 and 45, in other words, pre-Cold War, of a world of large regional blocs, semi-autonomous, large regional semi-autonomous blocs, United States at that time, it was England with its Commonwealth, it was Europe, in his view, more integrated and united, and interestingly, he believed that it was perhaps for Germany to undertake that task. The Soviet Union, well, that would now be Russia, Latin America, China, and India. He named them. These are the regions which he named. Question, and each of them would have to, and he was very insistent on that, there is no democracy without sovereignty, and there is no sovereignty without some control over what he called foreign economic policy. This precludes free trade. This suggests an international framework of economic and financial architecture, which permits different regions of the world to have their own and particular, shaped by history, geography and other factors, social and economic systems. Question, to what degree is it possible to envisage a multipolar world in our world with some of these characteristics? Finally then, of course, the one about the double movement, which is in some ways the most attractive, but in other ways the most problematic, I think, of Polanyi's concept. Question again of the possibility of organizing within national space in a world that is increasingly globalized. And also the fact that the quotation on the first page of the book about the double movement usually omits the last part of that, which states that such a double movement, such a resistance to the destruction of society or nature by market forces would engender yet other problems. I think he was, of course, writing about the 30s and thinking of the resistance perhaps in terms of the nationalism and fascism of Europe as a resistance, certainly a double movement, but raising yet other difficulties. I'm sorry that I've gone over my limit. I know I wanted to say ever so many things. I wanted to talk. And I was only going to just put it on the table, because I do believe that that there was a missing fifth institution. You know those four institutions on the first page about the balance of power, the self-regulating market, the liberal constitutional state, and the gold standard. But there was a missing institution, and that was political colonialism. And I think that gave the entire book, analysis, and world of thought. It left it within European space, so to speak. And that was his world. And as I said, you cannot see further than the world in which you live. And I think he saw actually very much further than the world in which he lived. But nevertheless, I feel that Polanyi's work is not well known in Latin America, Africa, India, and other regions of Asia, with the exception actually of Korea and Japan and Korea, and increasingly I hope China, because they have a new edition and they are requesting more translations. Because it leaves out of account that what was the colonial world in the 19th century, which became the decolonization of which I consider to be the most important event of the 20th century. And therefore it is those people who are located in those regions can see the deficiencies, faults, or more of the so-called Western model, perhaps more clearly and more easily than it is perceived to be here, where neoliberalism continues to have a firm hold, at least on people's thoughts, people's hopes or imaginations. And I will just close by referring to a very interesting article by Pankaj Mishra, who wrote a fascinating book called Out of Empire, can't remember now, which is just entitled the crash of the Western model, the failure of the Western model, and the idea that what we in the West have here constructed can be, by persuasion or by force, really imposed on the rest of the world. And that is a big, big question that overhangs this discussion. which on the whole has not had a dimension extending beyond the bounds of European space and its offshoots in North America. Thank you.
Carrie, thank you. Thank you very, very much. Magisterial tour de force of the life and work of Karl Polanyi, the personal recollections which only you can share with all of us and which are we are privileged to be able to listen to. I want to just draw your attention to the camera at the back. We are recording everything, and so we will put this up on our website, not in its entirety, but we will have YouTube segments on the website, but we will archive the full talk, as we will for all the plenaries throughout this conference, which was a very personal request by Kari. So I'm delighted that we have this facility. You also raised research agenda for those of us here who are Polanyyists and Polanyi scholars and want to continue to explore the avenues of continued relevance, the enduring legacy of Karl Polanyi. There are several questions you raised which I personally wish to continue to explore and hopefully to explore with you. We are on schedule, actually, except that we've lost time for discussion. So I would ask all of you if we can be disciplined so that you have a chance to get a cup of coffee. We can take a few minutes if anybody would like to.
Let's have a few questions.
Yes, yeah, we can take a few minutes to have some questions or comments. And I would ask you, please, to be brief. So if you have a question, to have a specific one and not to make it too long. And then we will have time to have a coffee break before we begin our plenaries. I see you, Abe Rodstein. Can I ask you, do you mind, Abe, if you go to the microphone that's in the middle, because we are recording? Is that microphone portable? Can we take it around? Okay, so you don't have to. You don't have to.
I've had a lot of experience lecturing to groups, so I don't need a microphone.
No. It's because it's being recorded.
Recorded.
Okay, that's the only reason. Yeah. No.
It's a small question. Kari mentioned the 4 ingredients.
Excuse me for interrupting you. I want to say, in case people do not know, this is Professor Abraham Rothstein from the University of Toronto. Yeah.
It's just a brief factual question. Kari mentioned the 4 ingredients of the self-regulating market economy as given in the first chapter. She said there was a 5th, but I didn't hear what that 5th was that she thought we should pay attention to. So my question is, could you repeat that particular item?
Well, there was no 5th, but I think there should have been a 5th. And it is political colonialism, which in our contemporary world now then is the rise of the independent nations of the previously colonized Asia and Africa.
Thank you.
I'll ask you just to introduce yourselves when you ask your
Okay,
question.
I'm Jordan Bishop. I've been around the tribe for a while. I've been fascinated by your reference to Polanyi's respect for the common man and his wisdom. And I'm reminded of Evo Morales, who, as far as I know, never got beyond the 4th grade.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments? Or yes, Radhika.
Just had a quick question.
It's Radhika Desai?
Yes, I'm Radhika Desai from the University of Manitoba. I've been wondering for a while, and perhaps Kari could shed some light on this. Given how much time Polanyi spent in the United States after the Second World War, did he have any brush with McCarthyism?
Yes, it's working.
This work?
Yeah, yeah.
That's a very interesting question. He himself did not. He did not. But in a sense, he was certainly affected by McCarthyism because my mother was not permitted to join him in New York because she was banned from entry to the United States under the McCarran Act. And therefore she set up her home on the outskirts of Toronto in 1950, where my father visited, much like a student, coming for vacation at Christmas and Easter and the summer for many, many years. Now, there has been speculation, I know that Rhoda Halperin, I think she was, and suggested that my father went and lectured about primitive and ancient societies in order to avoid the contemporary issues. I don't think this is true, but it's been said. Peter Drucker, who was a close friend of my father and wrote very interesting things about the Polanyi family in Adventures of a Bystander, described my father's teachings on primitive and archaic societies as busyness. I think he was profoundly mistaken, although in many other ways he acclaimed my father for his originality. So that is the answer to your question. I myself also was denied entry to the United States for a good 30 years or so. From the first time that I accidentally crossed the border in 1960 with some friends coming from Halifax, driving from Halifax back to Montreal. We thought we'd take a shortcut through the US, which resulted in my being served with something that told me that I was basically could not enter the United States, and that continued well until into the, I guess, the early 90s.
Maybe we can take one more question or comment if anybody would like to raise leave. No? If not, then it remains for me. Oh, yes?
I'd like to just say something.
Sure. Okay. Carrie. Last word, for sure.
Yeah.
Always.
I want to invite any of you to approach me at any time during this conference and ask me anything you wish. Because, as I say, I feel I'm a bit of a living legend, and being an objective description, that is certainly not going to be here forever. But here we are, we're a family, we're a tribe. Please feel free to come and talk to me and ask me anything about anything, including the lives of my parents particularly. That's all I wanted to say.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Just a quick comment before everybody breaks. I didn't use the word tribe, but I didn't want to say anything. I think I said big network and family, and Benoit chose the word tribe. So that's not a word I really like.
Extended family.
Extended family. Okay, extended family. Coffee outside. Can I ask people to try to be to please be disciplined and come back at 11. We have a very, very full day. And thank you, Carrie. Thank you.